Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to our channel, Scientology Peeling the Onion. My name is Mark Fisher, and I'm here with my co-host, Janis Gillham Grady. How you doing today, Janis?
I'm doing good. G'day, everybody, and welcome back to Peeling the Onion. As we've been peeling a lot of onions lately,
Yeah.
And today we're going to continue, and we're going to talk about someone who I've known. I knew him forever, pretty much. David Mayo. We'll talk a little about him, and then we'll go into his history and a little of his history, and then what he did after Scientology. And we have a guest who is going to help us with that. So let's bring on Sandy Barnes. She's been with us before. Sandy Holeman, sorry. And we'll bring Sandy on, and she'll be here listening while I talk about David Mayo in his earlier days, and then she's going to take it from me and do his later days.
Janis, your microphone is going in and out. I guess when you're moving your hands, that's when it does it.
Okay.
Hello, Sandy.
I'll try and stay in one place. Hi, Sandy.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing just great. Just great.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Wonderful.
She is so ready to do this one. Let me get started on David Mayo and who he is.
Okay.
So David got into Scientology in New Zealand back around 1958, 59. And I know that because in 1959, when the Melbourne Congress was on, he came over to Melbourne where he met my parents. And then he went back to New Zealand as an auditor. And then when I was at St. Hill in 1966 to January 68, David was there with his wife, Meryl. And they also joined the Sea Project early. And they kind of went back and forth between the ship and St. Hill for a while. And David trained all the way up, did his up to Class 6 auditor, doing the St. Hill Special Briefing course. And then he did Class 8. And then later on, he was on this ship, and he moved from being an auditor. He became the case supervisor on the Apollo. And that's pretty much for the crew. Those were the PCs. And we had auditors come into the ship to do internships under David Mayo and under Hubbard. So David worked very closely with Hubbard on the ship as the case supervisor. And Hubbard would call him up to his office to go over different case files and that type of thing. Anyway, David was the Class 12, which is the top auditor and and case supervisor. So he was with Karen De La Caria, Leon Steinberg, Brian Livingston, Quentin Hubbard, Jeff Walker. That's just to name a few off the top of my head of the original Class 12s.
Otto Roos.
So, Otto Roos. Oh, yes,
Tommy
I shouldn't
Lisa
forget
Klingvall.
Otto. Tommy and Lisa Klingvall. Who else? Who else did I miss?
Robin Linsell,
Robin Linsell.
who was also a case supervisor.
Yes, he was. But then, so there's a good list of Class 12s that David worked with as the case supervisor. And then when we moved ashore at the end of 75, David was heavily promoted as come to flag and get your case supervision from David Mayo, and also to be trained as an auditor, be a flawless auditor. So this is a picture of David that was used as part of the promotion of the Flag Land Base to encourage people to come for auditor training and to be audited. So, and then in 1978, Hubbard got really sick, and David was pulled up to La Quinta to audit Hubbard. And through the auditing, it was believed that David basically had saved Hubbard's life doing the processing. Now, Hubbard then released NED for OTs, New Era Dynetics for OTs, or it's also known as NOTs. Now, years later, I talked to David Mayo about that, and he said that when he was processing Hubbard, it was not Knott's auditing that he was doing. Hubbard, though everyone thought that's what David was doing, it was not. David said there was other processes he was doing, and then Hubbard came out with Knott's afterwards, but seemed to think that's what it was that David was doing, but it wasn't. Anyway, David helped Hubbard write the Knott's materials. Hubbard would write things up, put it in a sealed envelope, and the messenger would take it down to David. David would write the bulletin, the technical bulletin on Knott's. So David, very much became a right-hand man for Hubbard in the development and delivery of Scientology.
Janis, don't move your hands because you're breaking up whenever you do that.
I've got to stop being Italian, though I'm not. Anyway, so David continued as the top Scientology technical person, and even when Hubbard disappeared in 1980, up until that point, David continued to audit Hubbard. When we were in Hemet, David gave Hubbard daily sessions, and during that time period, he had a page who was Julie Gillespie and later became his wife. There's Julie and David. And Merrill and David got divorced, but they still remained very good friends. Anyway, David then, as the top tech person, LRH had actually told him to form his own organization to get it separated out from the administrative side. And then David and Jesse Prince had to do security checks on Pat Broker, which David Mayo did, and David Miscavige, which Jesse Prince did.
That's because Hubbard had suspicions that something was not right, and he was concerned because the all clear, he wanted to get all the lawsuits taken care of, and he was upset about that. And the people who he was relying on were Pat Broker and David Miscavige, right?
That's correct, Mark. So David and Jesse both wrote their reports on what they found in doing the security checks and set it up. But the only way to get something to Hubbard was through David Miscavige and Pat Broker. So according to Sarge Steve Fouth, who used to also be part of the whole communications thing, Pat and David Miscavige, would sit in the van together and retype different reports or take reports out that they felt shouldn't go to Hubbard. So the reports on what was found in their security checks apparently were removed from the mailbox going to Hubbard, so he never got the reports on what these two had been doing. David, meanwhile, then, from reports Miscavige did send up to Hubbard, David became a target. And David Mayo became a target. And David Mayo and a lot of his office ended up doing the running program after I had experimented it for everybody. So after that, David and Merrill and Julie, they're busted from posts and so forth. And did they route out or did they blow? Or were they kicked out?
They were part of that comment.
Oh, that big comment.
RTC Conditions Order 1 that we covered in the last episode
right.
with Sandy, and they were part of that whole group, and they were found guilty of suppressive acts and crimes and this and that, and were kicked out.
Right, so they were declared and kicked out of Scientology. So you're taking the top guy of Scientology tech who's supposed to be safeguarding it, and he's now given the boot and kicked out.
Right.
And that's when now Sandy can pick up this story.
Okay. So, I wasn't there for the formation of the Advanced Ability Center in Santa Barbara, but I did work there afterwards. And I know from talking to the people who were there at the when it was founded, that a critical or key figure in getting that set up was Harvey Haber.
Right.
And Harvey lived in Santa Barbara. He actually owned a house in Montecito, and he was married to Donna Haber,
Right.
who was an auditor. And he got together with David, and they formed the Advanced Ability Center, which opened up in a very upscale building in Montecito, which is a part of Santa Barbara that's where the richest people live, and it's very she.
Yeah,
And
and just one other point to paint the picture here. This is all in 1982, 83, and a lot of people were leaving Scientology. A lot of public people who had been in Scientology for years, mission holders. We talked about that as well, the whole disillusion of the mission network. And so there were people out there, and Mayo was out there, and basically they still wanted to continue to get services, right? So that was the whole idea of the AAC.
yes, so this was set up so that people who were disaffected with Scientology after 1982, which was the big blow up, there were a mass exodus of people leaving Scientology, and they had nowhere to get services, but they still believed in the technology, as it was called. So
Right.
they went to the Advanced Ability Center, and there the building was a beautiful building. It was all upstairs. They did run courses. The course supervisor was Virginia Downsboro, and they had a registrar. They had several auditors. Maud Dorr was an auditor there. Linda, I can't remember her last name. She was married to Rocky. What was Rocky's last?
Rocky Stump?
Yeah.
Oh.
She had been married to him.
Okay.
And so who else was there? Well, anyway, so Harvey had an office. David Mayo had an office. They were running things on a computer, which was, had never been done in the Sea Org.
That was new.
And the person who was managing all the computer technology was Harvey's son, Blake Haber. And then Dee Dee Riesdorf was the financial person. She didn't know what to call herself. But so Danny, my brother, heard about this place in Santa Barbara, and he said, let's go check it out. So we drove down to Santa Barbara from San Jose, and we went in and we talked to John Nelson, who at that time was the registrar, and we talked to everybody that was there.
That's John Nelson there on the right.
Yeah. And they had...
He was a former CMO Int and WDC chairman who got kicked out along with David Mayo. Anyway.
So they had accumulated a vast library of information, accurate information about LRH and about Scientology and about the Sea Org. And it was open and available for anyone to see. Now, the big draw at the Advanced Ability Center was not only David Mayo, who was well known to everyone that had left the church, but also the fact that you were getting the same services that you could get at Flag, but for much lower prices. Their price schedule was really reasonable. And so it was huge, and people were flocking to this place. Everyone who worked there was making big salary. Harvey Haber got together a bunch of people to contribute to buying a house for David and Julie in Santa Barbara, which is no small feat. And there were people who worked at the Advanced Ability Center who were renting rooms in this house from David and Julie, including Dee Dee And I think Maud Dorr lived there too. There she is. Superstar. I love you,
And
Dee Dee.
Yeah.
Janis, tell everybody who Dee Dee is.
Dee Dee was the commanding officer of the Commodore's Messenger Org and also the very first chairman of the Watchdog Committee, WDC. And she had been a messenger with me. She came to the ship in 71, and she was a Commodore steward. And then she became a messenger later and started setting her first messenger watches when we were in Tangiers, Morocco in 1972.
Yeah.
And then she was actually with Hubbard when he left after the GO got raided by the FBI. She was one of three with Pat Broker and Claire Popham who went with him to Sparks, Nevada for several months.
Yeah.
So that's who Dee Dee is.
Yeah.
And she like all of the people that we're showing here, they all got kicked. They all got S-canned by Miscavige and Broker. They all got false reported and kicked out and all that, and basically kicked out of Scientology. Thank you very much, David Miscavige. Anyway, go ahead.
So Danny and I were there for, I don't remember, a day or two, and it was cool. You know, one of the things that I noticed right away that I thought was great was there were no photos of LRH all around. That, you know, you can go into any Scientology org anywhere in the world, and there'll be photos of LRH on the wall. They didn't have that. I liked that. I was not really interested in reading the materials. You know, I was done with Scientology, and I believed whatever they wanted to tell me about Hubbard or Scientology and all the lies. I was perfectly happy to hear it and believe it, but I didn't really need to spend any more of my time debunking it because I was already thoroughly disabused of it. So I
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Because like people like John Nelson and David Mayo and Dee Dee were there, did they actually tell the public about, you know, let me answer your questions in terms of Hubbard and what was going on?
Oh yeah.
And all that. So you guys were actually getting the skinny or the inside scoop of what was really going on behind the scenes.
In fact, John Nelson
getting services for lower prices. Go ahead.
Right. John Nelson told me stories about important people that had been in the Sea Org, including Wendell Reynolds and Diana Hubbard, and was telling me what was in their PC folders, telling me about their sins. And
well, how would John Nelson even know what's in their folders?
Because he had been high up with Miscavige, and that's when I found out, so they're just going through everybody's PC folders, and they would do that. And then they would laugh.
Absolutely.
Guess what Wendell Reynolds was doing when we weren't looking? Guess what Diana Hubbard thought about blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, not just them, celebrities too. John Travolta, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
Tom Cruise, blah,
and
blah,
it was gossip fodder, and they loved it.
Yeah.
And they would just sit there and guess what I just found in this folder? You know, I mean, it was, I was thoroughly disgusted. So, so, you know, that was another revelation for me. Wow, I had no idea that was going on.
Well, it didn't used to go on. There wasn't supposed to be executive CSing. And I mean, I was around a long time, and
they weren't CSing, they were spying.
Exactly.
They were looking for funny things to laugh about people.
But what I'm trying to say is there's no reason those folders should have ever gone anywhere near an executive.
Right.
It's supposed to, you know, it shouldn't. And even David Mayo had told me when he used to audit people and do security checks, he knew the Guardian's office would be going through the file. So he was selective on what overt information he put in that folder because he didn't want the Guardian's office to find out about it.
Right.
Yeah, and it just goes to show you that basically they completely lie when they say, "Oh, this is priest penitent, confessional material. We're never going to use it. And of course, we know that they do use it, because once you leave, then anything you ever confessed to or had to handle is then put out against you on a black PR site or whatever. But you're right, though. I mean, I remember Miscavige all the time would be like, oh, he'd have the latest gossip about not just celebrities and higher ups, but like just regular staff members. Like, can you believe what the blah blah did? And I just found it out. Blah, you know what I mean? And you're supposed to like go like, wow, and it's kind of like not fair. It's not right.
Not right. So, so we went back home, and then a few months later, Dee Dee called me up, and she said, I've been working here for a few years, and I'm done. And I'm looking to recruit you to replace me to handle the accounting here. And so I gave myself the title of accounting manager. I said, sure. And they offered me $100 a day, 5 days a week. This was the other big deal. Okay, so we only had to work 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. We had weekends off, or whatever days off.
What?
Yeah, I know. Unheard of. And
didn't have statistics too, I'll bet, right?
And I don't remember if we had statistics. Honestly, I don't remember. We might have.
You didn't have to be upstat to have your day off or whatever.
No. So, and they were going to pay me $100, $500 a week, which was a step up from what I was making before I went there. So that I said, well, okay, I'll do it if you can find a job for Roger. And this was a big turnaround, because Roger had always been the sought after staff member, not Sandy, but now the tables were turned and they wanted me. And Roger and I had an interesting relationship at this time. We had been out of the Sea Org for 3 years. And Roger was really conflicted. He kept wanting to go back. He kept saying, I don't know what to do with my life if I can't clear the planet. And meanwhile, I was like, I'm so done. I am so done. And I had a career lined up. I was doing bookkeeping for small businesses. And I was just happy to be living a normal life.
And this was Roger Barnes, your husband at the time, right? Who left?
That's correct. That's correct.
So, and you had your young son. You
yes,
had your young son at this time.
That's right. Yeah. So when we went down to Santa Barbara, he was 6 years old. So we put him in a Montessori school in Santa Barbara, and we were both earning $500 a week. So that was $1,000 a week, which was good money.
Absolutely.
We rented a condominium in Carpinteria, and we went to work. And the job they found for Roger was, so at this point, all the influx of people who had gone, oh my God, look at this, look at the prices, look at David Mayo, look at they were starting to dry up, because they'd already finished their bridge. They'd done everything. And there was no new public coming in, because the mass exodus from the church had finished. So Roger's job was to try and figure out how to get new public in. Well, that was a lost cause. So I'd been there for about 3 months when I realized it was going bankrupt. And it was going bankrupt because the church was suing them, and they were paying enormous amounts of money to the attorneys to defend the lawsuit. And, they had these huge salaries. So at my suggestion, the huge salaries were cut back to more reasonable amounts, but it was still a losing proposition. So we arrived there in August of 85, and by April of 84, they closed their doors.
You said 85? Wait, you said you arrived in 85?
85 to 86. April of 86, they closed their doors because they couldn't. They still had some money, but they're still paying attorneys and accountants.
Right.
So that's not the end of the story.
Right. Go ahead. I'll let you do the story.
So at that point, I looked at Roger. I mean, this had been our last ditch effort to save our marriage because he wanted to do Scientology and I wanted to have a normal life. So this way, working at the AAC, we could have both. He could work in Scientology. I didn't care about Scientology, but I wanted to live a normal life, live in a condominium, have a 5-day work week, et cetera, et cetera. And so this was our compromise. The other thing I should point out is as soon as we arrived, they wanted to give us auditing. Well, I didn't want any auditing. As I have said several times now, I was done with Scientology. I was perfectly happy to be their bookkeeper. I called myself the accounting manager, but I really did not care to have any more auditing or courses or anything. So as a result, they started to think I was a plant from the church, that I was there to spy on them and report because I didn't want to go into session and get my withholds off, you know. So finally, I was told I had to go into session, so I did, but I kept having this withhold, and the withhold was that I didn't think any of it worked. I really didn't believe in it, and it was like ridiculous to sit there in a chair holding cans because I didn't believe in the technology at all.
All right, we'll be back to the show in a minute, but I wanted to talk to you all about a product that Janis has from her company, Outback Naturals, and it's called Koala Calm. Janis, what is it? Tell people about this product.
This is a product that my father developed. Must have been back in the late 80s. He came up with this. He always sold CalMag, calcium magnesium, which was a big seller. But his wife at that time had PMS issues, and so he started researching more and digging in, and he actually found she didn't need the calcium part, but what she needed was the magnesium part, because that helped break down the calcium and the body assimilate the calcium better rather than getting calcium deposits and kidney stones and that type of thing. So the magnesium helped dissolve that and help the body through by not having the calcium added with it.
Right, and it's really good for like people with anxiety or stress or having trouble sleeping. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. I take it actually every night. I take it with 250 milligrams of B1, and I sleep very well, actually.
That's great. Now, how do people, if they get it, it comes in a powder form, right? So how do they actually, drink it or take it? What do they do?
Yeah, well, you heat up hot water. I don't microwave. I just have a kettle and I heat up the hot water and I fill up half a cup of hot water, and then I add the amount of magnesium powder that I need. If I put the powder in first and then pour in the hot water, it fizzes and spills all over and makes a mess. So I do the hot water first. I add the magnesium. I don't put the spoon in because, again, it's going to fizz all over the place. So I just let it then fizzle down on its own and do its own thing. And then I add water, cold water, or some ice to cool it down. And then I just take it with my B1.
Okay, and it comes in 2 flavors, right?
Yeah, I have apple cinnamon.
Okay.
And also unflavored plain. And some people like to add this to their orange juice and different things like that, or even their tea.
Yeah, I've used it in the evening too. If I need to, having trouble go to sleep, I'll heat up some water, put some of the Koala Calm in it, and then I'll just sip it while I'm watching TV or reading or whatever before I go to bed. And next thing you know, I go right to sleep. So if you're having problems with anxiety or stress, or if you're having trouble sleeping, it's really great for us. And of course, we're not getting any younger, any of us. So anyway, we recommend the Koala Calm. Now, I want to tell people how they can get it. You can actually order right now today at our store. Just go down to the tab down below, click on it, and you can find the Koala Calm there. It's $19.99 plus shipping and handling in the United States. And you can just order it there. But Janis, in the non-US, how can people order the Koala Calm?
They can just go to Amazon.com and order it there because they have international shipping and so forth. But Mark, there's also something else I wanted to comment on. My dad would always tell me that he would take magnesium sometimes if he's feeling tired. He would just take the calm because it would help give him energy throughout the day. And he'd just add it to his water bottle and drink it throughout the day.
That's great. That's just another way that you can try out the Koala Calm and get some benefit from it. So anyway, if you're interested in the product, Koala Calm from Outback Naturals. Okay. Now back to our show.
The other thing that I want to mention about while it was still open was that there were two people there all the time. They were constantly there. They weren't getting any services, but they were there all the time. And that was Bob and Cynthia Midoff. And Bob Midoff was Ray Midoff's brother. Cynthia Midoff had been married to David Englehart on the ship, and she was Cynthia Englehart back then. Very cute girl, blonde. Sometimes she was blonde, sometimes she was a redhead. She had lots of boyfriends. She did lots of stuff. No one knew for sure who she had slept with, but she was not. She was promiscuous, let's say.
Okay.
So
she was also known as Sammy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So she and it turned out that she and Bob were the plants that the church had sent in. None of us knew it at the time. Everybody thought they were just the best of friends of the AAC, that they were just great people. I went to their apartment, and supposedly they were living on money that Bob was making doing music recording with famous people, because he had all this sound equipment in their apartment, and it was all a setup. But so they thought I was the plant, which of course I wasn't. But it was really a difficult position to be in, because how can you prove that you're not who, you can say, you can deny it all you want, but there's no proof.
Right.
So, so that was uncomfortable. So when it closed, Maud Dorr and I became the de facto representatives of the now deceased AAC, and we worked with the accountants and the attorneys on the case. And I think we were getting paid. We must have been. But Roger and I, since our compromise strategy was now at a close, we decided to separate, because again, he was still an avid Scientologist and I was absolutely not. He did a doubt formula to decide whether or not we should stay married, which I thought was ridiculous. I wanted to go get counseling from a real therapist, from a professional therapist. And he said, if Scientology can't solve it, then it can't be solved. He was still a firm believer. So, so we separated. We remained friends. We are friends to this day. And we raised our son together, even though we lived in different locations, some of the time different states. And, we would show up for his high school graduation. We were all four of us there, my new husband, his wife, Lynn, and we showed up for his college graduation. And the rest of the time, we just kept in touch all the time about any problems that came up with the kid. We would, get on the phone with each other and, well, what do you think we should do about this? And we really did collaborate to raise him, which was great. And Roger was a good father. I have to say, he was a very good father. He was on time every month with the child support, like clockwork. And he was stepped up. So, so Maud and I handled the legal case. I remember being deposed I think the attorney was Yanni. Remember
Oh,
Joe?
Joe Yanni. Joe Yanni.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah,
later,
I'll fill in when you're done with your story. I'll fill in
yeah,
from the RTC
yeah,
side of things
yeah.
because I was there
So,
for that.
and he and I were kind of flirting with each other at the deposition, which only made Maud more suspicious about me. I'm sorry, but it's humorous in retrospect.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think. Eventually I went out and found a job in Santa Barbara after realizing there was no way I could live on what's it called when you get support from the government for
Welfare.
unemployment insurance. I got unemployment. I said, how am I supposed to
Okay.
live on this? And they said, you're not. You're supposed to have savings. I'm like, oh yeah, right. So so I did not. I was not unemployed for very long. I got a great job at a high-end restaurant and retail wine store in Santa Barbara. And then the rest is not Scientology related.
Now, can we go back and let's discuss? There's you and there's Sammy.
Oh yeah. So Sammy was trying to set me up. She was trying to get me. She was trying to set me up in two ways. One was at this party, which I think that's David Mayo back in the background with the white collar. It was a party of the Advanced Ability Center. I don't remember, Christmas party, I think. And Sammy said, I want you to look really sexy, Yeah, just pose really sexy, like you're a real sex bombshell, So that's that photo. And then also after the AAC closed, she called me up one night. I was at home alone in my condominium, and she says, why don't you have a glass of wine? We're on the phone. I go, oh yeah, sure. I pour myself a glass of wine. She keeps asking me to pour myself more and more wine. She keeps talking to me about, remember on the ship, what stuff we use? And she starts asking me sexual questions. Did you ever do anything really dirty sexually? And she was trying to get me, I know it was being recorded. She was trying to get me to confess to something because there wasn't anything in my PC folders, apparently. I mean, I know there wasn't because I didn't have anything to confess to her. I think I said, remember that guy? And I won't tell you his name, but I said, yeah, he asked me to give him a blowjob. That's about as dirty as I ever got. I'd never done that before, and I didn't know how, and he had me do that, And she was like, "Oh, didn't you do anything else?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't." And who did you sleep with? And so I gave her the list of names, and I said, "How about you? Who did you sleep with?" And she's like, "Oh, everyone thought I was sleeping around, but I never did." And I'm like, "What?" Right? Yeah. So anyway, that was, and I have to tell you, so I was, pretty high on wine when she had got me to confess, my sexual endeavors. And afterwards, when I found out that she was the plant, I was so humiliated because I knew that conversation had been recorded. I knew there was nothing they could pin on me because I really never did anything, whatever she was looking for, whatever dirt she was looking for, there wasn't any. But I was so humiliated about the whole conversation that it was just, I felt dirty, She really, and I thought she was my friend,
Yeah.
And it was at that point that I just said, you know what? I'm not only done with Scientology, I'm done with Scientologists, ex-Scientologists even. And I cut off all my communication lines except to two people, my brother, Roger, which I don't count, and Homer Schomer, because I knew that Homer had been paid off by the church. I didn't know how much because he wasn't allowed to reveal it, but I knew that if he had been paid off because he couldn't talk to his daughter was the reason.
Right.
And so I knew that he had to be legitimately an ex-Scientologist. And other than that, I didn't have anything to do with anybody until the internet came out, and Mick
Wenlock.
Wenlock set up XSO.org.
Message
And
board.
we all got together and did group chats. That was my first time going back and talking with any other ex-Scientologists.
Let me go ahead and go ahead.
Yeah,
Jen.
we did that reunion in 2000 at Huntington Beach.
Right.
Yeah, and then also this one here is a bunch
Yeah.
of us in 2007 here
Right.
in Vegas, all just
Yeah.
hanging out.
And I went to those, but I didn't talk to anybody afterwards. You know, it wasn't like these are my old friends. Now I'm going to be back in touch with them. No, I was there. I was happy to. I mean, I go to every high school reunion. I love reunions, period.
Yeah.
Any kind. And I was happy to see everyone, but I didn't want to really. I didn't trust anybody.
No.
Well, let me tell the other side of the story, okay, of what was going on after, with the AAC at the international base, okay? Because David Mayo, like you said, had left, and they decided they opened up this group in Santa Barbara called the Advanced Ability Center, right? So this was going to be Religious Technology Center's big target. It was the big target to go after, because you can imagine David Mayo, who was the most highly trained case supervisor in Scientology, and all of these auditors that were there, they were delivering services in competition with Scientology at lower prices, right? Oh, we can't have that. We can't have that. They're just a bunch of squirrels, right? So that Religious Technology, under the leadership of Vicky Asnerand and Jesse Prince, who was overseeing that as well, they were given the responsibility to shut down the AAC. Okay. And Hubbard was still alive during this time period too. And he was concerned about it as well. And so they were writing reports, and all this stuff was going on. Joe Yanni, was an attorney that Religious Technology Center hired. He was a trademark attorney for the Grateful Dead. Okay. And so he had all these celebrity clients and all that, but the Grateful Dead defended their trademarks like a dog with a bone. I mean, anybody tried to, use their different stuff without their permission, Yanni would go after him. So he was hired to go after the Advanced Ability Center, saying you guys were violating the trademarks of Scientology, delivering stuff and not calling it Scientology or whatever. And so they went after you. Then they, like you said, they planted people in your group, and it was Bob Midoff, whose brother, Ray Midoff, replaced David Mayo as Senior CS International, right? And Bob Midoff was there along with his wife, I guess, Sammy. And I thought, and OSA and RTC were all over this, because the idea was to entrap people, shut them down. Obviously, Sammy, whatever her name is, she was trying to entrap you, get it recorded stuff. And that way they had dirt on you that they could try and,
Blackmail.
Blackmail and black PR you. David Mayo, the same thing. They started digging up all sorts of stuff about him and Julie Gillespie and this and that. And it was basically smashed, the thing. And didn't you guys, the AAC, used to have like Saturday picnics or Sunday picnics or whatever, like get-togethers with all the people at the AAC?
Yeah, I think that was more before I got there.
Okay. Well, then they would send people in there who, same thing, like, and just sort of, look around and talk to people and try. Is that what that is, Janis?
Yeah. Yeah.
I see Alan Buchanan. I see Frankie Friedman on the left there. I don't know who the other, there's David Mayo next to Alan Buchanan.
Well, and Julie is behind him.
Yeah. Yep. And John Nelson is in front of Alan and David.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and these were all powerhouse people in Scientology till they were kicked out, So it was seek and destroy. The other part too is, didn't they also? We talked to Robin Scott. I mean, he opened up an AAC in England, because he showed us that he had a beautiful property and building and all that. Yeah. And of course, he stole the knots materials out of Copenhagen, which we should also cover in our story with Robin Scott, which you can find on our channel. So it was a big operation, and it was basically get Robin Scott in jail, shut down David Mayo, and ruin everybody. Go ahead, Janis.
Yeah, well, also one of the PCs, pre-class that the AAC had was Flo Barnett. And
Oh,
Flo
yeah.
Barnett is the mother of Shelley Miscavige and Clarice Miscavige. I mean, Clarice
David
Barnett.
Miscavige and David Miscavige's mother-in-law.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. David Miscavige's mother-in-law. So what was interesting also at this time period in relationship to Flo is that Mark Yeager was in trouble because his stepfather, John
John Ziegel.
John Ziegel was attacking Scientology and had all sorts of tapes and doing lectures and stuff. And Yeager was in trouble because of that. So now here you have Miscavige, who's in charge of all clear for Hubbard, with his mother-in-law getting processing at the AAC.
Yay.
And there was no way Miscavige was going to even let that go up to Hubbard, because then he knew he would have been, he would have been removed from
Absolutely. I didn't
Hubbard's
even think of
lines.
that. That's a great
Yes.
point, Janis.
He would have been removed instantly as soon as that was found out.
Oh, absolutely.
So that was a big blow. But anyway, so that's just an interesting thing with the AAC and its connection to Shelley Miscavige's mother, Miscavige's mother-in-law.
Right. Yep.
And the person handling all the legal affairs for Hubbard. Hubbard was still alive in hiding, So you're right, Janis. I had never thought of that. You're absolutely right. That would have blown sky high if Hubbard knew that.
Oh yeah. It would have changed history.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
All right. So Sandy, I was going to ask, so then what did you end up doing then? Then you moved on in life doing other things, just working and raising your son and all that, right?
Yeah. Got remarried to a guy that lived in Santa Barbara. Yeah.
Wow.
A very nice man. I like him.
Actually, no. Scott is my third husband.
Oh, Scott was after. Okay.
Yeah. The second husband, when I met him, I had only been out of Scientology for like 4 years or something when I met him. And he sat me down one day and had me tell him the whole story. I spent the whole day telling him my story of my time in Scientology. And at the end of it, he said, okay, now I don't want you to ever talk about it ever again. I want you to move on and be done with it, which was a stupid thing for him to say, because of course more stuff's going to come up, and I needed a safe person that I could talk to, but it wasn't him. And that marriage lasted 13 years. I really tried to make it work. I was married to Roger 12 years. I was married to my second husband for 13 years. And I won't go into that whole story, but it never did work for me. And then I met Scott.
Yeah. And how long have you been with Scott now?
23 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's a good one. He's a keeper.
He is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm muted. I was muted. Janis, so tell everybody, so what happened? Because you stayed in touch or was in touch periodically with David Mayo. I mean, Scientology didn't just let up after the AAC. They continued after years, right? Right?
Yeah. No. They went after him.
Yeah. Well, David and Julie, they traveled around a bit trying to get a safe place. And they were even down there in Hawaii for a while, the Caribbean for a while, New Zealand, different places. And I know when they were down in the Caribbean, someone kept putting a pot plant on their patio, and which was illegal, and you would be thrown in jail if it was found that you were growing pot. And this plant kept appearing. So I would assume that it was planted.
So to speak.
And anyway, so Julie and David were harassed for years and years afterwards and they contacted me because they were looking for a safe place. They contacted some other friends of mine. We were all trying to figure out how to help them. And David then just a couple of years before he died. He came and stayed with me for a bit, and we had some good conversations. And he and Julie used to windsurf. They'd just go way out on the horizon, no land in sight, windsurfing. I grew up on the ocean, and I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But they did. But it was funny, the way David and I got back in touch is someone emailed me and said, "Do you think this is really David Mayo?" And David had posted on one of those XSO websites or something like that. And I'm like, I don't know. What's that sound?
That's I told you that. Go ahead.
Anyway, so now I've lost my train of thought.
Windsurfing.
David Mayo was posting something on the thing.
Oh, right, yeah. He was posting. Yeah, and they asked if I thought it was David, and I said, I don't know. Let me find out. So I wrote to this person's email, a David Mayo email at gmail.com, and I said, tell me something just you and I know. And that way I would know if it really was David. And he wrote back and said, you used to make hot lemon juice for Julie and I when we were doing the running program. And you, Paul, and I and Julie would all sit around and natter. And just so people know, natter in Scientology means you're sitting there talking bad about something that you disagree with. And yes, that's what we did. I would pick lemons and boil the hot water, and the four of us would sit around drinking hot lemon juice and talking bad about management. Yeah, that confirmed it for me. It was David. Yeah.
That's wild. And then how long ago did he pass away? He's no longer alive, right?
Right. He passed away, over 5 years ago, I guess it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then Julie?
David was actually going to help me with some of my book stuff. And he actually called me and he said, Jan, I can't help you anymore. I had some surgery, nasal surgery, and they slipped and they actually hit his brain, and it affected his memory of finer details. So he says, I can't help you with those details because of the brain injury.
Oh,
yeah.
What a shame.
But
how about Julie?
David was a good guy. But I don't know what Julie is now, but she's still alive and well, and she's moved on. And yeah.
So David called me once. It was after I was with Scott because I was living in Santa Cruz, and he wondered if I had any way to contact either our attorneys or our accountants from the AAC. I don't remember why he wanted to contact them, but he did. I think he needed some reference or something. So I actually had a letter of recommendation from the CPA that worked with the Advanced Stability Center. And so I was able to give him the name, phone number, and address of that guy. Yeah, but we didn't chat. I have to say, well, no, I won't say it. Never mind. I didn't feel close to David. I'll just leave it.
I understand.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people that weren't close to him. He was very much a loner, if you would call it that, but he didn't socialize with a lot of people.
Well, and part of that was Hubbard's policy of case supervisors. They were in an ivory tower. I mean, literally, that was the term used, that you could not go in and speak to the case supervisor. They were not to be disturbed. They had somebody out in front of their door, and you had to send a net message in and out. You couldn't just walk up to them. And so they kept their distance from people, not just David. A lot of people that I know that were case supervisors were like that. They were unapproachable.
Yeah. Well, over the years, I ran many, many messages to David, starting on the ship, but having known him for a long time, it was before that.
Yeah.
So no more AAC. And that's
Right.
the story. And that's a good example of Scientology, fair gaming and spying and trying to destroy and
Yep.
not letting people go on and carry on. And they think that they're ripping them off and yada,
Yep.
yada, yada. And David Miscavige, and what he was doing, crazy.
Yeah.
It's funny. In the AAC, when did you said it closed in
April of 86.
Well, Hubbard had just died like 3 months before that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
4 months
Yeah.
before that.
Yeah.
So anyway, cool. Anything else you want to talk about on this show before we go, Janis?
No, I think we've done a pretty thorough job here.
Sandy,
Yeah.
we want to thank you for being here. We want to thank you for joining us. I just wanted to mention to everybody here, if you'd like to become a member of our channel, you just hit the join button right next to the place where you can subscribe. And you can actually, there's different benefits if you become a member of our channel. It's not that expensive, and there's no contract. You can cancel at any time. But if you're interested in finding out, just click that join button, and there's a little video that describes what you get and how it works. So anyway, we appreciate that support. We want to ask you all to please subscribe to our channel, of course, and hit the like button. Janis likes to say rock slam that like button, and that really helps us get the message out to other people, that type of thing. And if you have any questions or comments, David Mayo is somebody that a lot of people knew a lot about and wondered about, the Advanced Ability Center. So if you've got questions that you would like to ask, just go in the comment section and ask away, and we will make sure that they get answered. Finally, if you'd like to donate to our channel and support our channel, you can buy us a coffee. There's a link in the video description. Go down there, click on the link, follow it, and we really appreciate any support that might come that way. And that is that.
Good.
All right. Until next time, everybody. We'll see you later. Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.